Marvel Snap is not a competitive game. In fact, right now, I don't believe Marvel Snap ever can be a competitive game. And probably not for the reasons that you think that I think that. Ever since I started playing Marvel Snap, I've been waiting for, well, more like longing for a competitive community to form around this game. I want this game to become an esport. I used to be a Hearthstone caster, and now I'm making Marvel Snap content, subtly trying to conceal the fact that my whole entire end goal is to commentate over Marvel Snap tournaments. Not doing a great job of hiding that one. In short, I want Marvel Snap to be a big competitive game, probably more than you do. So far, it appears that Second Dinner, the developers of Marvel Snap, haven't put a very high priority on fostering Marvel Snap as a competitive game. In contrast, when Hearthstone launched, the developers, Blizzard, immediately launched the Legend system. When you got to Legend, Hearthstone's equivalent of Infinite, you were given a rank, and as you won games, your rank went down until you eventually hit rank 1. At that point, you'd know you were the highest ranked player currently in your region. Unlike Infinite, Legend allowed players to track their progress against each other, with their ranks prominently shown in gameplay. That part's important. This all served as a huge motivator to try to encourage and inspire players to achieve a higher rank. The presence of this ranking system early in Hearthstone's lifespan really helped to foster and cultivate a competitive community and really set the focus on that game. That's what Hearthstone is. It's competitive. In Marvel Snap, there is no equivalent ranking shown during gameplay. The lack of emphasis on your rank may discourage players from striving to be competitive, from striving to get the best rank possible. In fact, the only rank rewards Marvel Snap has are some credits, some golds, and sometimes a title that you're probably not going to use, let's face it. Now I get it, it's already getting pretty old comparing Marvel Snap to Hearthstone. I'm bored of doing it myself. But ever since launch, Hearthstone has had a thriving and well-developed competitive community. The inclusion of an on-screen ranking system and the emphasis on competition does cause players to care more about their rank. That's just a fact. Ultimately, it also has a major knock-on effect for content creation. Now, I'll stop right there and mention I actually scripted this video before this whole drama between Jeff and Alex, but it does sort of cover a similar subject. Picking into the reasoning behind Jeff's points, I don't think it's really got anything to do with Alex's content, but more about how content is framed in the world of Marvel Snap. Marvel Snap is not Magic, and it's not Hearthstone. Whereas in Hearthstone, players' reputations and their YouTube channels and Twitch streams, and a lot of the time would grow due to them really showcasing high skill at the game. That doesn't really happen so much in Marvel Snap. In the Twitch Hearthstone directory, viewers would seek out players specifically that consistently sit at a high rank, and they'll know who those players are because the rank is always on screen during gameplay. In Marvel Snap, viewers don't seem to care so much. They want to see a fun deck winning games. And because there's less decision making in a single game of Marvel Snap compared to a game of Magic or Hearthstone, it is more difficult to scrutinize someone's skill at the game and to work out how good they actually are. In addition to that, people don't seem to care how good a deck is when they want to try it out. They care about how cool it is and how cool the synergies are. Whenever I see a tweet or a YouTube video saying, "This deck has won lots of games," my cynical esports mind goes, okay, sure, what rank did it win those games at? Because to me, a deck's only really proven good if it's been winning games at high infinite. Like, there's a big difference between a deck that wins lots of cubes at rank 30 and a deck that wins lots of cubes at infinite. These two decks are drastically different in quality. But as there's no rank shown in-game on screen at all times, content creators can easily edit their content together and never even show what rank they're playing at. And that's just fine. This would never have shown in Hearthstone. If you're making a deck guide, if you're trying to show experience and prestige playing a deck, people are going to want to see that you played it at high legend. They need to know that you know what you're talking about. But in Marvel Snap, no one cares. Marvel Snap has a lot less elitism than Hearthstone, and because ranks are not shown on screen at all times, more scrupulous viewers are going to have a harder time deciphering which players to watch based on how good they are. There aren't really that many ways to see that up front. Not to mention, in Marvel Snap, once hitting Infinite, the game sort of just stops. The gameplay experience doesn't get any more difficult. In fact, I have evidence of this. So far this season, I've hit rank 136. You get to Infinite at 100. I just kept going. And I can tell you, without a shadow of a doubt, The game did not get any harder after I hit Infinite. I kept playing the same broken deck that I'd been playing before. My opponents didn't get any smarter. They didn't start outplaying me at all. The game just stayed the same. In fact, I even know that at around rank 130, I was playing against players who hadn't quite yet hit Infinite, because those players were tweeting about some of the games they'd played that day. With the deck that I was playing, I could consistently win between 20 and 30 cubes every hour without thinking too hard. And my opponents weren't getting harder, so my rank was only a display of the amount of time that I'd put in, not a display of how skilled I am at the game. As there are no official leaderboards, no decay, and none of the other symptoms that high-ranked leaderboards would usually have in esports, like Hearthstone, it gets to the point where you hit Infinite and you're just competing for fake internet points that really don't mean anything. That's not to say that there aren't some amazing players and content creators who have been thriving by showing off their skill in Marvel Snap. Dara and KM Best are two examples of players that have really shown just how good and how smart they are and grown followings accordingly. And I continue to wish them every success. They certainly deserve it. As someone who has been heavily invested in card games and esports over the years, I've come to understand that a player's perception of whether or not a game is competitive can vary greatly depending on one's experience in the game. While a more experienced and competitive player may have a more nuanced view of the game's competitiveness, a less experienced player may have a limited understanding of the mechanics and strategies in a higher level of play. It's important to recognize that competition in any game can vary greatly depending on the skill and experience of the players involved. A game that may appear highly competitive to a less experienced player might not offer the same level of challenge or depth to a more experienced player. A game of Marvel Snap features only 6 turns. This in itself does limit the player's autonomy over the game. Yes, there is decision making, but there is only so much interaction between players. Now, that is not uncommon for a card game in general. A game of Hearthstone or Magic can be won or lost based on card draw alone, of course. But in a best out of 3 or a best out of 5 match, there does tend to be a good amount of room for decision making that can decide the series. Touching back on Marvel Snap again, locations are the other random factor that can take the control away from the player. Yeah, locations can be a really cool random factor that allow players to push their game knowledge and skill and take advantage over any situation. However, a bad X-Mansion or a Sanctum Sanctorum appearing at the wrong time can just outright cost you the game.
Hey, stop! You idiot! You're completely ignoring Marvel Snap's main competitive feature. Its masterpiece! Its pièce de resistance, the snap mechanic. A lot of the true skill difference between players in Marvel Snap comes from the snap mechanic. If a player has the ability to understand when they're truly ahead and snap, or when they're truly behind and retreat, that's where the skill edge comes from. In a battle mode match, a match will be won or lost based as much on snapping and retreating as the cards that the players dealt. A player's true skill in Marvel Snap comes from the snap mechanic.
And that is the biggest problem. We're moving on to a new conversation here. That conversation is Marvel Snap as less of a strategy card game and more of a game. Wait. Oh, maybe I'm not supposed to say that word. Can't have the YouTube overlords demonetizing me. But there's an extremely famous, very old card game that has a similar system to Marvel Snap's snapping mechanic. It's a card game that's played with regular playing cards, 52 of them. Do you get? I'm talking about poker. If Marvel Snap's snapping mechanic is the most competitive element in the game, then there's a real discussion that can be had here about whether it is a strategy game or a game. Now, imagine that you're in a Disney board meeting full of bigwigs and investors and ultimately decision makers. Now, say a single important person in that meeting is worried about the negative connotations of anything in the Disney IP being thought of as a game. Like, move forwards a few years, say that Marvel Snap Esports did take off, you could have players competing for hundreds of thousands of dollars, and the outcome of this competition could live or die based on a snap or a bluff. Do you think that this theoretical future would ever make it through these big Disney board meetings? Marvel Snap's battle mode comes out very soon, and with it comes the ability for players to compete against each other. And once again, the snapping mechanic takes center stage here. as players snap to reduce the HP of their opponent. Now, a lot of third parties are going to be wanting to get involved with battle mode and produce tournaments based off of it, but they're going to have one problem. Second Dinner have not confirmed the existence of a spectator mode yet, and I don't think it's coming anytime soon. Without a spectator mode, producing Marvel Snap tournaments becomes nigh on impossible. Marvel Snap's launch has been extremely successful. The game has won Mobile Game of the Year award, it's made a lot of money, and proven that player retention is something that it knows exactly how to do. So if the game's already successful, already making money, why would Marvel Snap want to spend marketing budget on pushing esports when they could instead just keep hiring Samuel L. Jackson to star in more commercials for them? That would probably be just as effective for pulling in new players. So if pushing esports would be such a risk whatsoever for any Marvel or Disney brands, maybe they just won't want to risk it. So what does that mean for players? Without the presence of big competitions and prize pools, many players will lose interest in Marvel Snap over time. Competition and the opportunity to win money over time are often major motivators for players to continue playing and improving their skills in a card game, where in theory, the only required skill is the ability to think, and therefore, it's accessible to everyone. There's not even any equipment required or intense gaming rigs needed to play the game, you just need a phone. Some players will over time lose the drive to continue playing and ultimately drop out and go and play another game. Additionally, the lack of competition or prizes can actually prevent other card game players from becoming interested in Marvel Snap in the first place. The prospect of competing for big money can be a major draw for a lot of players, and without that, a lot of people will just be less interested in Marvel Snap. Overall, I feel that the lack of competition would have a big negative long-term effect on Marvel Snap, but in the end, I don't think it matters. Disney won't want to have anything to do with bluffing or betting or poker and I think that's that. Do you think I'm overthinking it? Do you think actually Disney bigwigs won't care about the snapping mechanics and that the link between Marvel Snap and poker are actually a lot further than I'm speculating? The crux of my argument is that it only takes one person in a meeting to go, hey, that sounds a bit like and I believe the whole thing gets shut down permanently. But I hope I'm wrong. What do you think? Do you care? Do you want competitive Marvel Snap, or do you just, like my girlfriend, like playing the game to look at the pretty Marvel pictures? Let me know. I hope you've enjoyed this deep dive into Marvel Snap and whether or not it can be competitive. A huge thank you to my Patreons on screen now, but especially Nick Charles. Without you guys, I wouldn't be able to continue making this content, so thank you. The link is in the description for if anyone wants to join them, and I'll see you in the next one.